Imagine yourself every day in a cage like an animal. You will not go back to France until you've told me the truth. I'm going to spoil your life as you have spoiled mine. I'm going to kill you, okay? Be quick!
Sophie Lyonne was born in France in 1996. When she was very young, her parents divorced, her mother remarried, and as a result of this relationship, she had another child. Sophie grew up in the countryside east of Paris with her mother, stepfather, younger brother, and older stepsister. She was a very simple, quiet, and shy girl. She didn't like to interact with others much, had few friends, and even found it difficult to talk to her own family. According to her mother, she often tried to talk to her daughter, ask about her day, what she learned in school, and so on. However, Sophie mostly responded with short phrases or one-word sentences. There were times when she talked more about what she did during the day and how she felt, but it was relatively rare. However, Sophie got along very well with children. She enjoyed being around them and was able to maintain very good relationships with them. She seemed happy, and it was evident that this was her favorite thing to do. So, after finishing middle and high school, Sophie studied early childhood education, hoping to find work related to children. She started looking for such opportunities, but couldn't find anything she liked or that was specifically related to children. So, Sophie began working as a cashier in a supermarket because she needed to financially support her family. She didn't want to remain unemployed, and while she was searching for an opportunity to do what she truly enjoyed, she thought it was a good option. After some time, she found a job listing thanks to a friend. A family in London was looking for a nanny who spoke French to look after their two young children, a 6-year-old boy and a 3-year-old girl. The couple consisted of Sabrina Quidir and Wissam Mejouni, whom everyone called Sam. Sabrina was involved in the fashion world in London and worked as a makeup artist for celebrities. Sam, on the other hand, had been a financial analyst at a bank but had already quit his job by the time they sought a nanny. He had used his savings to buy 2 apartments that the family rented out. They lived in a prestigious area of London, and their financial situation was very good, maintaining a high standard of living. Sophie saw this as the perfect job. She would practice her English, which she had been studying, and take care of 2 children, which was what she wanted to do. At first, her mother didn't want to let her go, saying it wasn't a good idea to travel far to a foreign country with strangers. However, Sophie's determination was so great that her parents eventually agreed to let her take the job. In January 2016, when Sophie was only 20 years old, she arrived in London. In the first months of her stay in London, and throughout the year 2016, Sophie was very content with this family and was happy with the children. Neighbors living nearby said they saw in her a girl who was very dedicated to her work. Of course, in London, she had very little social life. There were many nannies who would get together on weekends to socialize. They also interacted with each other when they took the children to the park or school, but Sophie always kept her distance. She was very engrossed in her work. Sophie was supposed to return home to France in September 2017, but in May 2017, she wrote a letter to her mother stating that she was no longer happy with the family she worked for. According to Sophie, Sabrina accused her of stealing from her, reduced her salary, didn't allow her to go anywhere, and didn't give her the allotted time off. So, Sophie's mother bought her a plane ticket and sent it to her, but Sophie didn't use the ticket. For the next few weeks, almost nothing was heard from Sophie, although in previous months, she had been very communicative with her family, sending postcards, letters, and emails. Over time, these messages became less frequent, and her parents became very worried about her. On Wednesday, September 20th, 2017, a barbecue was being prepared in the backyard of Sabrina and Sam's house. The problem with this barbecue was that the smell began to become quite strange, and moreover, the smoke coming from the family's garden was too strong. Some neighbors knocked on the door and found Sam alone. He said he was grilling chicken and lamb and assured them not to worry because there was always too much smoke when he barbecued. as he didn't know how to use it properly. However, one of the neighbors didn't believe this and called the fire department. Everyone was afraid that the fire would spread to neighboring houses or that someone would be poisoned by the smoke. When the firefighters arrived, they went inside and asked Sam what he was doing. One of the photos showed that he was grilling chicken. The firefighters found it very strange that such strong smoke was coming from chicken and lamb, so they examined the remains on the grill. When they looked closely, they saw fingers and what seemed to be a nose. They called the police, and these bones turned out to be human remains. At that moment, Sam was taken into custody and sent to the police station. As he was being transported, more law enforcement personnel arrived. The street was completely blocked, and the neighbors started wondering what could have happened. Suddenly, the police brought out something that looked like a body covered with tarpaulin from the garden. A few days later, it was confirmed that it was the body of Sophie Lyonne, who was 21 years old at the time. Sam and Sabrina were both arrested, and the months of torture and suffering that the young Frenchwoman had endured in this couple's home were revealed. As usual, a forensic examination was conducted to determine the cause of death, the day of death, and what had really happened to Sophie. Initially, it was assumed to be murder, a conclusion confirmed by the examination. Sophie had several fractures of the sternum, ribs, clavicle, and jaw, and these fractures were several days old. Unfortunately, the exact cause of Sophie's death couldn't be determined 100% because her body had been severely burned. It was also impossible to determine the day of her death. It didn't take much effort to understand that Sam and Sabrina were clearly responsible for her death. Now, it was necessary to find out what had happened and how it had occurred in order to begin the legal process and bring justice to Sophie, who deserved it. Following the results of the forensic examination, 2 days after the discovery of the body, Sabrina and her husband Sam were charged with the murder of Sophie Lyonne. The trial revealed much about the conditions in which Sophie had lived in her last few months in London. Much attention was paid to Sabrina's personality. Sabrina, like Sophie, started her career as a nanny. Afterward, she began working as a makeup artist and became involved in the fashion world in London, working with celebrities. She had a son with the singer Mark Walton, who was a member of a boy band at the time. They fell in love, dated, and had a son, Sabrina's older child, whom Sophie took care of. In 2013, their relationship ended and they broke up. Mark told Sabrina that he didn't want anything to do with her, which led to a complete change in Sabrina's personality. According to several people who knew her since she started dating Mark, she became very unstable, behaved strangely, had several episodes of anger, and often became angry with people without any apparent reason. Sabrina also began to stalk Mark, knowing where he was, calling him constantly, and wanting to remain part of his life, but he repeatedly rejected her. While she was still obsessed with Mark, she began a relationship with Sam. Sam and Sabrina had known each other for many years, and after a few months of their relationship, Sabrina became pregnant. She moved into Sam's apartment, where their daughter was born and where Sophie lived later. As the girl grew up a bit, they decided to hire a nanny to help them. Externally, Sabrina and Sam's life seemed perfect, but in reality, they had many problems. As I mentioned earlier, Sam worked as a financial analyst at a bank. He quit his job because Sabrina told him that he spent too much time at work and there was not enough time for the family. However, when Sam left his job, their income, apparently, became less than what Sabrina was used to. She wanted to go to dinners with celebrities, buy expensive dresses, and while she could afford a relatively luxurious life thanks to her own work, she wanted more and more. Furthermore, for many years, she continued to pursue Mark. Sabrina had reached the point where she had concocted the idea that her ex, Mark Walton, was a child abuser, an exploiter of people, and just a very bad person in general. Clearly, she had no evidence of any of this, and all the accusations were deemed false. In 2017, Mark Walton decided to move from London to the USA. When Sabrina found out about this, she became very angry. He was in America, and she was in London, and she could no longer control him, didn't know where he was or who he was with. Sabrina couldn't keep tabs on him, couldn't stalk him, or call him like she had done for the past few years, and so she began venting all her anger on Sophie. At first, Sabrina accused her of things like stealing from the house. She also told her that she didn't do things on time, that she cooked poorly, that she was always late picking up the kids from school, anything just to have an excuse to treat her poorly and yell at her. Soon, the verbal insults escalated into physical violence. It was revealed that not only Sabrina, but also Sam had repeatedly beaten Sophie. They kicked her, slapped her, beat her with cords, and the girl began to suffer greatly. In addition, they deprived her of food, didn't allow her to bathe, and even cut her salary. According to several people who had seen Sophie in recent months, she always wore the same clothes, was very unkempt, didn't maintain hygiene, all because these people didn't give her the opportunity to live a normal life. Sophie's free time was also restricted, and to some extent, she was locked in the house, only going out to take the kids to school, pick them up, take them to sports classes, and do shopping for the family. After that, she was completely isolated from the world. Sabrina even repeatedly prohibited her from talking to her family. The court presented recordings that helped confirm this. On these recordings, made with Sam and Sabrina's mobile devices, you can hear them verbally abusing Sophie, as well as physically assaulting her.
Imagine yourself every day in a cage like an animal. You will not go back to France until you've told me the truth. I'm going to spoil your life as you have spoiled mine. I'm going to kill you, okay? Be quick!
You better know that we will not let you go back until we know the whole truth. Nothing but the truth.
In addition to the audio recordings, photos were found on all the family's electronic devices, computers, and phones, showing how Sophie changed over time, becoming thinner and more emaciated. She was already quite slim before, but in this last photo that you are now seeing on your screens, she looked very awful. Obviously, Sophie was not healthy, neither physically nor emotionally. According to the girl's mother, when she saw her daughter's photo, it reminded her of people who had been in concentration camps. Sophie endured several months of torture, but she remained silent out of fear of Sabrina, as her mother claimed that she had repeatedly threatened her. The woman threatened to send her to prison, harm her parents, and much more. She even claimed that Sophie had a secret relationship with Mark Walton, and that she let him into the house when no one was there. Sabrina wanted so badly to destroy her ex-partner that she forced Sophie to write a letter in which she allegedly confessed to having a secret relationship with Mark Walton. And all of this happened because he made her do it and promised her roles in movies and TV series in exchange for a sexual relationship. Obviously, this was impossible. Mark Walton didn't even know about Sophie's existence and moved several months after her arrival in London. As I mentioned earlier, the exact date of Sophie's death was not known from the autopsy results, but thanks to the investigation and what was said in court, it became somewhat clear when this happened. According to the prosecution's version, it was the evening of September 19th. Several surveillance cameras captured Sabrina and Sam on September 20th when the body was found by the barbecue. You can see Sam taking the children to school that morning. Then, after classes, Sabrina took them to a small playground. It seemed like she deliberately delayed coming home. Sam also went to the grocery store to do some shopping. Sophie usually took care of all these tasks. That's why they hired her. Therefore, prosecutors believe that Sophie was already dead at that time. It can also be assumed that there was a certain premeditation in the murder. Sabrina was texting one of her friends, and this friend asked her if Sophie had any friends who would be willing to work for her, cook, walk the dogs, do house cleaning, and spend time with her daughter. Sabrina replied that Sophie no longer worked for them and hinted in the message that things had not ended well. This happened on September 15th, 5 days before the police arrested Sabrina and her husband. Regarding their testimonies, they both accused each other. Sabrina told the story that on the night of September 19th, she went to sleep. Sam was arguing with Sophie because she hadn't prepared dinner the way he wanted and had done it wrong. Sabrina went to sleep and didn't hear anything more about the argument. According to her, when she woke up in the middle of the night, she heard noise in the bathroom. It was Sam drowning Sophie. Sabrina told the authorities that she couldn't save the girl because when she entered the bathroom, Sophie was already almost dead. Sam told the same story, but in his version, the person who argued with and drowned Sophie was not him, but Sabrina. They both told the same story, blaming each other. Then, the prosecution brought in a crucial witness, Sabrina and Mark Walton's son, the eldest child in the house. The boy said that on the night of September 19th, he heard Sabrina and Sam arguing with Sophie, and then both of them took her to the bathroom, and he heard the nanny screaming for help. Thanks to this testimony, the prosecution was able to establish that Sophie's death occurred on September 19th, and that Sam and Sabrina drowned her in the bathroom. As I mentioned earlier, although they didn't plan it, Sabrina to some extent already knew that it might happen, which is why she was telling her friends that Sophie no longer worked for them. After hearing witness testimony, audio recordings, and the timeline of the case, everything was in the hands of the jurors, who, after deliberating for 30 hours, delivered their verdict. Sam and Sabrina were found guilty of the murder of Sophie Lyonne and sentenced to 30 years in prison. Sabrina even wrote a supposed farewell letter to Sophie, in which she wished her to be in a better place. For Sophie's friends, family, and acquaintances, this was a mockery, and it was evident that Sabrina felt no remorse for taking Sophie's life. It is unknown, or at least I couldn't find information about the custody of the two children. It's possible that it was not disclosed to the public. However, we can only hope that they are with people who love them, nurture them, and help them cope with this difficult time, as they were repeatedly witnesses to the cruel treatment of their mother and father towards Sophie. Here comes the end of this horror story. I ask you to like the video, subscribe, and write in the comments your opinion about this situation. And now you can watch the last video with an equally horrible story about a girl who was beaten and burned alive by her friends.